Delivery of goods stage.
There you go.
Thank you. Shall we continue?
No problem. Now, after the order stage, we go to the delivery of goods stage, which is just as self-explanatory as the name.
The seller delivers the goods to the buyer.
After he has examined the creditworthiness of the buyer and is satisfied with it.
It is so good of the seller to actually transport the goods on behalf of the buyer.
Yeah, although sometimes the buyer may decide to come for the goods themselves.
Do we have any documents used in this stage, Mr. Joseph?
Yes, there are. A lot of them actually. We start with the advice note.
Which is?
This is a document that the seller sends to the buyer shortly after transportation of the goods has started to let the buyer know that the goods are on their way.
Makes a lot of sense.
It outlines the means of transport that the buyer should be expecting, the descriptions of the goods that have been dispatched, as well as the number of units sent.
And now, the buyer can verify that what they ordered for is what is being sent over, right?
Correct. And now, he can make arrangements to receive the goods. Inside the goods packed, the buyer will receive a package note.
Another document?
Yes. Each package or box contains its own package note.
What is it used for?
It is used to counter-check the goods packed in comparison to what was ordered. And it does not contain the price of the goods so as to reduce theft cases.
How is that possible?
You see, one is easily tempted to steal something that they feel has a lot of value. But when the prices are not marked, nobody will know how much the goods cost.
I see. So the people transporting the goods do not know the worth of the goods.
Exactly. Now, as for the delivery note, it is sent by the seller to the buyer to accompany the goods and is made into 3 copies.
3 copies? What are those used for?
The first copy remains with the seller. The 2 copies are sent to the buyer together with the goods. The buyer checks the delivery and upon ascertaining that they are the right ones, signs the delivery note.
Let me guess. 1 signed copy is sent back to the seller while 1 copy remains with the buyer.
You guessed correctly. A delivery note should contain the name and the addresses of the seller and the buyer, the date of delivery, the order number and the delivery number, the details and quality of goods delivered, and finally, the signature of the person receiving the goods.
What happens when goods are transported using public means?
That is a very good question. In that case, a consignment note is used.
Consignment. That is such a mouthful of words.
I know. It is given to the company that is transporting the goods to authorize it to transport goods to the buyer.
Gives the transporting company some credibility.
Yes. When the buyer finally gets the goods, he signs the consignment note to prove that the goods have been received.
Any special features of a consignment note?
Yes. It shows the terms of delivery. That is, if the transportation has been paid for in advance or if the payment is to be done at the point of delivery. If the transportation has been paid for, then it is marked carriage paid. But if not yet, it is marked carriage forward.
I am loving this conversation more and more. Accounting is not so difficult after all.
It is an attitude that people have. Otherwise, if you just make sure that you understand each step of the way, then you end up understanding the whole thing.
Wait a minute. So far, the whole process is moving very smoothly from the buyer looking at the possibility of buying the goods to the seller sending him price lists and all that.
Yes.
To the buyer ordering the goods and the seller delivering them. Aren't there any problems at all in this chain of events?
Actually, I was coming to that. Sometimes the buyer decides to return the goods back to the seller.
Why would that occur?
Well, there are several reasons why. But first, I would like to tell you more about what happens when goods are being returned.
Okay.
So first, the buyer checks the goods to see if he or she is satisfied with the delivery. If they're not, then he prepares another document called a return note. The return note will accompany the goods back to the seller.
What is the content of a return note?
It shows the details of the goods that have been returned and the reason why they are being returned.
And what can the seller do after receiving the goods back?
He can replace the goods immediately, or he can adjust the prices to match the goods that have been returned. Alternatively, he can return the buyer his money if the buyer has paid in advance.
I see.
So, back to your question. The buyer can return the goods for several reasons.
Such as?
The goods could be damaged while on transit.
Obviously, I wouldn't accept damaged goods.
Precisely. Secondly, the quality of delivered goods might be different from the ones the buyer had asked for. Sometimes, the goods might be of wrong type altogether.
Oh no.
Lastly, the goods might be of excess quantity and the buyer can return the excess.
That's understandable.
And that is all about the delivery of goods stage. Excuse me a minute.
Sure.